My name is Elena Vance, 48 years old. I used to be a forensic investigator with the Seattle Police Department. My job was to decode the cold bodies laid out on stainless steel tables. To me, a human being was nothing more than a complex biological structure, a storm of chemical reactions, muscle fibres, and bone. I worshipped physical truth. I believed only in what a scalpel could touch, what a microscope could reveal, and what numbers could prove. In my former world, the soul was a luxury concept, and God was a fairy tale for people too afraid to face the void. But 5 years ago, my entire system of logic collapsed. Gwen, my only daughter, died in an accident where every ounce of my forensic knowledge and reasoning became useless. I stood there and watched her slip away, powerless to stop it. From a sharp investigator who always controlled the scene, I turned into a drifting ghost, clinging to high-dose painkillers just to escape reality. I took pills every day simply to silence the screaming inside my head. On my left wrist, there is always a faded pink plastic bracelet, scratched and worn down by time. It was the last gift Gwen threaded and gave me with her own hands. It was the only anchor keeping me in this world, and at the same time, the cruelest reminder of a mother's failure. But on the night of the 16th of November, when my breathing stopped on the cold floor, I finally understood something terrifyingly clear. Everything I thought I knew about life and death before that moment was completely wrong. That night, I sat on the cold wooden floor, counting the last 20 Percocet pills in my palm, then swallowed every one of them with hard liquor. My throat burned, but the numbness spread faster. I collapsed forward, my face pressed against the freezing boards. My heartbeat slowed and then stopped. And then I realised I was no longer on the floor. I was floating near the ceiling, looking down at the motionless body below. With my forensic instincts kicking in, I began analysing the scene. Female victim, 48 years old, pupils fully dilated, bluish discoloration in the extremities from oxygen deprivation, no signs of struggle. I was observing the crime scene of my own death. The door burst open. I watched the rescue team rush in after a neighbour reported a strange smell or the silence that had gone on too long. I saw Miller, the firefighter I had worked with on countless cases, drop to his knees beside my body. He pumped my chest violently. I heard the sharp crack of ribs fracturing under the force. Miller shouted, "Don't give up, Elena. Damn it, don't give up." I stood there, coldly, watching the fight for a life inside a body that no longer felt like mine. The instant the defibrillator released its strongest surge, I was ripped out of the room by an overwhelming force. I shot through thick darkness and suddenly stopped in a place without gravity. This was the Library of Choices, a vast network of billions of white light threads woven together like a cosmic web. I reached out and touched one strand, and instantly a different lifetime unfolded before me. This wasn't a hallucination. This was a colossal data system. In the centre of that space, a radiant consciousness appeared. I call it the Great Architect. With no fixed form, it radiated a purity of love so powerful that every trace of guilt inside me dissolved. It spoke directly into my soul. "Leaving so soon, Elena?" I answered with thought alone. "I have nothing left. I destroyed my life. I lost my daughter. I am a failure." The light pulsed softly, like a comforting hand on my head. "You call it failure. I call it specialized training. You walked through the deepest darkness so you could recognize real light. Without that pain, how could you ever understand the soul screaming out there? But why, Gwen? Why did you let her die?" I screamed inside my mind. The architect fell silent for a moment, then opened a luminous film before me. I saw myself as a soul before birth, standing before the loom matrix. I watched myself point with my own hand at the thread labelled "loss of a child." The architect said, "You chose this, Elena. You did. You said you needed a shock powerful enough to shatter the rigid shell of a forensic investigator who believed only in matter. You needed pain deep enough to open your heart to receive the message of the Great Awakening. Gwen was a brave soul. She volunteered to walk this path with you so you could fulfill your mission. Stunned, I asked, a mission? What mission could a drug addict like me possibly have? Precisely because you were addicted. Precisely because you hit rock bottom. That is what gives your words authority. The world is entering a phase where old systems will collapse. The comfortable will panic. Only those who have gone through hell and returned will have the courage to become anchors for others. The great architect moved closer, and I felt myself dissolving into the light. Elena, you are not returning to live your old life. You are returning with a responsibility. You will be a witness to the coming time window. A time window, I asked. It didn't answer with words. Instead, a blazing map flooded my mind. Dates appeared like deep cuts in reality itself. Numbers began to move, forming patterns. The voice thundered with authority. I give you this map. This is a future no government, no superpower can hide or stop. Look closely at the days from the 16th to the 21st of November. I felt myself trembling beneath the weight of the information. I saw miracles, riots, and a global wave of awakening rising behind those numbers. It hadn't only shown me the past to soothe my wounds, it handed me a map of a future no government could conceal. Within the radiant space of the Library of Choices, the great architect did not only reveal the past to me, it unfolded before my eyes, a blazing timeline, a living map where future events were engraved in light itself. These were not vague predictions. This was a spiritual route humanity is destined to walk through, whether ready or not. It emphasized one moment, a convergence point that burned brighter than all others, the time window from the 16th to the 21st of November. It called this the soul convergence point. During these brief 6 days, the veil separating the physical world and the spiritual realm will thin to its absolute limit. This will be a moment when human connection to the source becomes direct, without religion, without ritual, without intermediaries. It told me that during these 6 days, those who are prepared will receive divine data downloads while they sleep. As the timeline began to vibrate, I saw clusters of miracles appear like lightning ripping through a dark sky. In my own city of Seattle, I saw an elderly man named Thomas, 80 years old, paralysed from the waist down for 15 years inside a grey nursing home. On the morning of November 17th, as nurses were cleaning the room, Thomas suddenly stood up. His withered legs surged with life. He didn't just walk, he began singing an ancient Latin hymn in a clear, soaring voice. The strangest part was this: Thomas had never been to school and had never learnt a single word of Latin in his life. Those who witnessed it fell to their knees in fear and reverence. At the same time, in a hospital in New York, a woman named Martha, a late-stage Alzheimer's patient, who had not recognised her children for 5 years, suddenly opened her eyes. The cloudy haze vanished, replaced by crystal clarity. For exactly 2 miraculous hours, she asked for paper and pen and dictated a detailed list of political upheavals and natural disasters that would occur over the next 10 years. After writing the final line, she smiled and said she was only repeating what she had seen beyond the veil, then drifted peacefully back to sleep, leaving her family stunned by predictions accurate down to the smallest detail. The next strange event occurred at a rural elementary school in Texas on the morning of November 19th. An entire kindergarten class of 50 children spontaneously and simultaneously drew the exact same image. It was the Loom Matrix, the glowing web of light threads I had seen in my near-death experience. When teachers asked why they drew it, every child gave the same answer: The people in white taught us how to weave the world again last night. In Portland, a medical shock unfolded before three of the most sceptical doctors on staff. A patient named David, whose malignant cancer had spread throughout his body, was waiting to die. But after the night of November 20th, when he woke up, he felt a surge of electricity run up his spine. Imaging tests revealed the impossible. Every tumour had vanished without a trace, as if they had never existed. Dr. Henderson, the attending physician, dropped the medical chart when he saw the perfectly clear scans. But the revelations did not stop with individual miracles. The great architect showed me a rapidly escalating timeline after the time window. In December of this year, a wave of healing will sweep through slums and rehabilitation centres. Those abandoned by society will wake up with no craving for drugs or alcohol. They will flood the streets, testifying to the freedom they have received. In January of the following year, the world will witness the rise of knowledge gatekeepers, ordinary people suddenly gifted with higher perception, able to see the energetic structure of reality and solve scientific problems humanity has struggled with for centuries. By spring, massive spiritual revivals will erupt, without speakers, without music. Millions will gather spontaneously in large stadiums, simply to sit in silence and feel the presence of the Most High. And by summer, the old belief systems built on fear and control will begin collapsing like houses of cards in the wind of truth. Of course, darkness will not retreat quietly. I saw fierce resistance from the existing system. Government agencies will begin secret interrogations of people like me, using windowless rooms to force us to sign statements claiming it was all hallucination. Major media corporations will move in unison, labelling the miracles as mass psychosis or hallucinogenic biological warfare. Even traditional religious leaders will stand in pulpits, commanding followers not to speak about the time window from November 16th to November 21st, fearing that once people encounter God directly, they will no longer need powerful intermediary institutions. Yet this wave cannot be stopped because it is global. In South Korea, suicide rates, once at crisis levels, will suddenly drop near zero. Thousands of young people in Seoul will report hearing the same loving message whispered in their sleep, dissolving every desire to end their lives. In Brazil, inside the violent favela districts, the most feared gang leaders will lay down their weapons and fall to their knees after witnessing a vision of the Great Awakening in the night sky. And in Germany, a team of leading scientists will announce a staggering discovery, a coded sequence within human DNA that, when translated, perfectly matches the messages I am sharing with you now. The most defining feature of this revival will be the great reversal. The elderly in nursing homes, once treated as society's burden, will become the frontline warriors. No longer the ones needing care, they will become powerful, spiritual mentors. Their wrinkled hands will rest on the shoulders of confused youth, transferring the calm and wisdom of those who have glimpsed eternity. This is why I am standing here telling you this now. We are drawing dangerously close to the soul convergence point. Begin counting down to November 16th. Do not let the system's fear pull you under. Right now, leave a comment with your country and city so we can connect the spiritual network. Send this revelation to the oldest people you know. Prepare to receive the light. The door is opening and no one can shut it. That was the final image I saw. The moment the data finished engraving itself into my mind, the radiant world of the Library of Choices collapsed in an instant. Boom! The golden torrent of light vanished in an instant, replaced by flesh-tearing pain, as the defibrillator's surge slammed straight into my chest. I was ripped out of those magnificent revelations and hurled back into an emergency room thick with antiseptic fumes. I sucked in a violent breath. My lungs burned as if filled with shattered glass. My eyes flew open to the blinding white ceiling above me. The first sound I heard wasn't crying, it was the frantic beeping of the heart monitor. Dr. Harrison rushed to my side, his hands trembling as he pressed the stethoscope to my chest. The moment his skin touched mine, he recoiled as if grabbing an iceberg. He shouted for a nurse, demanding another thermometer, convinced the first one was broken. The number on the screen froze the entire trauma team, 94.1 degrees Fahrenheit. By medical theory, at that temperature I should have been in deep coma or multi-organ failure. But I was wide awake, staring past him at the wall clock, creeping toward 3 o'clock. My body was ice cold, yet inside my veins I felt a molten heat surging like lava. I whispered, my voice raw but razor clear. Rescue Helicopter 7. Call sign 1142. It will crash on the west landing pad at 3:14 a.m. Engine 2 will ignite. Warn them now. Dr. Harrison looked at me like a madwoman returned from death. He gently pressed my shoulder, telling me to rest, blaming lingering medication. But exactly 14 minutes later, a thunderous explosion shook the hospital. Alarms screamed through the ER window. Orange fire roared up from the helicopter pad. The nurse's radio crackled. Helicopter 11-4 suffered engine failure and crashed during landing. Dr. Harrison stood frozen, the stethoscope slipping from his hand. He turned toward me, eyes filled with terror and disbelief. Less than 2 hours later, as I was transferred to intensive care, the door swung open. 2 men in black suits stepped in, faces emotionless. Not doctors, not Seattle police. They introduced themselves as special investigations. One placed a thick file and a fountain pen on my table. Inside was a legal statement declaring everything I said in the ER was a drug-induced hallucination from opioid shock. Sign here, Elena, the man with the scar on his eyebrow said in a voice cold as steel. We restore your forensic badge, your career, your reputation, all medical costs erased. But if you continue speaking about the time window or miracles, you'll spend the rest of your life in a secured psychiatric facility. I looked at the pen then at my hand, still faintly glowing with light from the Library of Choices. In that moment I understood the system was afraid. They were trying to buy my silence with the very badge that once defined me, because the truth threatened their entire structure of control. After they left me to think, a young nurse came in to change my IV. She worked quickly, but as she leaned close, she slipped a small folded note into my palm. She said nothing, only met my eyes with quiet meaning before rushing out. I opened the note. No name, just a precise set of coordinates, the very place I had called the Library of Choices in my near-death experience. Beneath it, tiny handwritten words, you are not alone. We saw it too. I lay back, trying to close my eyes and find peace. But the world was no longer solid matter. I began seeing fine threads of light like spider silk passing through concrete walls connecting Dr. Harrison slumped in the hallway to the nurse who had just left, connecting the 2 suited men whispering in the parking lot, connecting all of them to me. Each thread pulsed with a different colour and vibration. I saw dull grey strands of fear clinging to those in power and radiant gold strands sprouting from souls that were awakening. Truth was bleeding into reality. I could no longer look at a human being and see only flesh and bone. I saw an entire destiny map weaving itself in real time, and I knew no matter their threats or bribes, the veil had been torn open, and no one could ever stitch it back together. I stand here now, no longer a forensic investigator searching for answers in cold bodies, but a witness to radiant life rising. If you are watching these images and feel like you've hit rock bottom, listen closely. You are not a discarded piece of creation. You are a courageous soul who volunteered to be here, right at the epicenter of the Great Awakening. Now, look back on the journey we've just walked through a new lens. First about pain, the agony of addiction, the tears of loss, the suffocating weight of loneliness were not punishment. They were spiritual training grounds. You needed that darkness so when the light of the Most High pours down, your soul would be deep enough and wide enough to hold his power. The scar on my arm and the cracks in your heart are the very places where light enters first. Second, about betrayal and resistance from the system. When agents and leaders try to suppress the time window from November 16th to November 21st, that is proof they are afraid. Your awakening is the greatest threat to power structures built on fear. Third, about the power of revelation. The timeline I saw was not hallucination, it was a path of redemption. The miracles in Seattle and the children in Texas are confirmation that when the physical veil thins, God's power will touch you directly without institutions standing in between. Finally, freedom. You see, I still wear Gwen's pink plastic bracelet. For 5 years it was a chain dragging me into pain and pills. But now it is no longer a burden, it has become wings. It reminds me that love is the only real thing and that love lifts me every day to fulfill this mission. We have only a few short days before entering the most critical time window in history. This is not a moment for fear, this is a moment for action. I'm calling you to make a small commitment right now to mark your place on the spiritual map. Leave a comment below with the words "I am awakened," or if you believe in the highest power, write "God is Lord." These are the signals by which we recognize each other among millions still asleep. Do not keep this revelation to yourself. Share this video as a rescue mission. Send it to at least one elder you respect. They carry the keys to the coming great reversal. Every share you make lights another flame against the darkness. And now join me in this declaration of protection. I declare that every chain of fear and addiction binding you must break right now. I proclaim divine protection over your mind and body as we approach November 16th. You are covered in the light of truth. You are strong. You are worthy. And you are unconditionally loved. The spiritual door has opened, and from this moment forward, no force can shut it in your face. We will meet again in the blazing light of the Great Awakening. Do not fall asleep.